Hi guys, this is Variant Chapter 11. I hope you enjoy. Tapping. I opened my eyes. The room was pitch black. I could barely see Mason's bunk above me. No light was coming in through the drapes, and even the gap under the door was dark. There it was again. Tapping. Far away. I sat up and listened. It was persistent. Somewhere down the corridor. Standing up, I saw that Mason was still asleep. It was chilly, and I pulled my Steeler sweatshirt on and opened the door. The hallway was dim, but I could tell that no one was there. I had expected to see someone trying to get into another guy's room, but the corridor was empty. I checked my watch. 3:34 a.m. The noise was coming from the far end, and I hurried down after it, even though I knew it was foolish going anywhere alone at night. I was well aware of the enemies I'd made. As I got nearer, it was clear that the sound was coming from inside the dorm. Someone was pounding on our door. I quickened my pace, and as I reached the door, the lock buzzed and opened. Carrie was there, alone. She grabbed my arm. "Benson, what's wrong?" "Lily's missing. Go get Curtis." I nodded and turned, running back down the hall. Had she tried to escape, or was it detention? Carrie had said she was missing, not that she'd been taken, but maybe she hadn't heard. As I ran, I could picture Laura and the society girls dragging Lily away just as the guys had done to Walnut. Curtis must have heard something because he opened his door and almost immediately after I knocked. In seconds, we were back down with Carrie. "She's nowhere in the dorm," Carrie said. "We've searched all the rooms, even the other gangs." Curtis's face looked grim in the dim light. When was the last time anyone saw her? "We were all down in the cafeteria doing decorations last night," Carrie said, "but no one remembers seeing her. The last I was sure I'd seen Lily was when she walked off the paintball field with the 2 hits to her shoulder." Had she been in the cafeteria? I couldn't remember. "What about her roommate?" I said. "Tapty didn't get back to her room until after midnight, and the lights were off. She said she assumed that Lily was already there asleep. Lily has the top bunk." Why hadn't Lily waited for the medic? Did she want to leave the field? Curtis put his arm around Carrie's trembling shoulders. "Lily's smart. She's probably just... I'll get everybody up. We'll search the school." "Okay." I finally spoke. "I think she tried to escape." Carrie gasped. "What? Did you know about this?" Curtis snapped. "No," I said, holding up my hands in my defense. "I don't know anything about it, but Lily's one of the few people in here who I've heard actually say she wants to escape. She says it all the time." Curtis sighed and rubbed his hands over his face. "Other people say it too." They obviously didn't want to listen to me talk about escape attempts, but things were starting to click in my brain. "She left during the paintball game. Listen, I was hit and sitting there waiting for Jane, and Lily walked past me. She'd been hit in the shoulder, not the head, but she wasn't waiting for the medic." Neither Curtis nor Carrie said anything, but they exchanged a look. "I don't know," I finally said. "Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Let's go look for her." 20 minutes later, all the V's had been roused out of bed and were gathered on the first floor. Jane was standing at the door, staring out the window. I was about to go talk to her when Curtis got everyone's attention. "Just for simplicity," he said, "let's just break up into our paintball squads. I don't want anyone going alone." "What's the deal with the lights?" I asked. I tried the switches, but they weren't working. Curtis shook his head angrily. "I don't know. They won't come on." Mason, rubbing his eyes, whispered, "Rats in a cage, man." "Joel, you have the 3rd floor," Curtis said, handing out assignments. "Hector, 2nd. John, 1st. He paused, looking at Mason and me. Our squad was missing a member. "Mason, Benson, take the basement. If you find anything, meet me back here. I'm going to go talk to Oakland and Isaiah and see if they know anything." "Isaiah probably did it," Hector grumbled. "Put her in detention or something." "Don't say that," one of the girls said. "She's going to be fine." Curtis clapped his hands just as he did before every paintball match, and we all split up. Mason and I walked in silence, heading down the main stairs into the blackness of the basement. I checked the switch at the bottom, but it didn't work either. "Hang on, Fish," Mason said quietly. I could barely see his outline in the dark, but heard him fiddling with something. A moment later, a tiny round light turned on. "Reading light," he said, the blue glow illuminating his skin. He looked like a ghost. I bought it a couple months ago, but ran out of good stuff to read. I called out Lily's name and then listened. The narrow cement walls muted the sound, and it disappeared almost instantly. The two of us stood there, waiting, but there was no response. Without a word, Mason headed for the first door. The lock buzzed and opened. He shined his light inside. The room was empty and small. It had one of the deep basement window wells, and a little bit of moonlight spilled on the floor. I moved to the next door. We repeated the process up and down the hall, sometimes finding storage, mostly old desks or textbooks or scraps of lumber and pipe, but a lot of the rooms were empty, just as they'd been when I'd gone through here looking for trash. Our janitorial and maintenance contracts let us go almost anywhere we wanted. We searched the infirmary rooms, including any closets or cabinets she could possibly fit into, but there was no sign of her anywhere. I had high hopes for the back stairs that Becky had shown me. If Lily had wanted to hide, that could have been a good spot. But, like everywhere else, they were empty. Besides, why would she want to hide? "Did you see her on the field after she'd been shot?" I asked, as we opened another door. This room had several rows of boxes stacked to the ceiling, and Mason peeked around them with his light. "No," he said. "We left you. I got hit and she kept going." His voice was cold and tired. "She passed me," I said. "She'd been shot but could have waited for a medic." "You think she went over the wall?" "Maybe. Don't know." He turned his gaze back to the boxes and opened one. It looked like lab supplies, rubber hoses and Bunsen burners and all kinds of bottles and jars. I hated chemistry. "Be glad you missed it," Mason said absently, like he felt he ought to make a joke, but had no desire to laugh. "Do you think she was serious about escaping?" I asked as we moved to the next room. "I mean, really considered it? She talked about it all the time." He just pointed at a security camera. "About a year ago I worked for a hospital," I said. "I was just a janitor and I was only there for a month, but I knew the security guys and I hung out in their office sometimes. They didn't even have TVs to watch their cameras. They were just there in case some crime was committed. Then they'd look at the tape." Mason sighed. "So what?" "I think we're all too afraid of these cameras. There have to be 1,000 cameras. They can't watch all of them all the time." "But people get punished every day," he said. "Someone must be watching." I nodded, unconvinced. Did they really catch everything? The students were usually all in the same place, weren't they? All in class, or all at lunch, or all in the dorms. The school didn't even have to watch all the cameras. Of course, sometimes the school punished people for no reason at all, cameras or not. I changed the subject. "I wonder if we could make something with those chemistry supplies, maybe some acid to burn through the fence." Mason spun, glaring at me. "What is wrong with you, man?" "What? Lily might be dead and you don't even care. All you ever talk about is escaping and trying to figure stupid things out." I paused, stunned. "Well, don't you want to figure it out too?" "Not when we're looking for Lily," he said, turning and opening a new door. In another 10 minutes we met up with Tapti, Gabby, and Joel. I could tell from their somber faces that they hadn't had any more luck than we'd had. We left the basement and returned to the main floor to join the others. Depression hung like a cloud over the gang. Curtis was sitting on a bench, his elbows resting on his knees. I sat beside him. Mason's words kept running through my head. He was right. My escape could wait. I hadn't been treating the V's like friends. They were just people, just part of the school that I hated. My chest felt heavy and tight. I wish now that I'd said something to Lily, that maybe I don't know. "What about outside?" I asked Curtis, my voice low. Maybe, like me, Lily hadn't been able to get over the wall. Maybe she'd gotten hurt and was out there somewhere. Curtis shook his head. "I woke up Isaiah in Oakland. Isaiah insists that they didn't take her to detention, and you know he'd be proud of it if they did. He'd say something. Oakland even offered to open the outside doors for us to go out there." "Really?" "Yeah, I think he was doing it just to piss off Isaiah." "So let's go," I said. "Even if she didn't try to escape, maybe she just twisted her ankle in the forest or something." No, he said. His face was ashen. Oakland came down here, but they wouldn't open for him. He said they usually can't get out until dawn. With nothing else to do, we all split up and headed back to our dorms. The schedule was already posted on the TV. Class today would be early, 7 a.m. I had to wonder whether it was a punishment. They weren't giving us a chance to go back to sleep. Mason opened the closet when they got back and started getting dressed. You all right? I asked. He shrugged. I thought maybe you and Lily might have been... He shook his head. No. It had to be a lie. They were always together. Oh. I sat down on my bed. My head ached from stress and lack of sleep. Mason turned to look at me as he buttoned his shirt. His face was tight and cold. I decided early on that I wasn't going to do that. Get attached, I mean. Like with Curtis and Carrie. I think they're nuts. But isn't that part of surviving this place, I said, thinking of Jane. We're stuck here, so let's make the most of it. If you say so, he said, his face stony and emotionless. But what if one of them gets it? What if the school decides one day that Curtis has been too much trouble and they toss him into detention? What'll that do to Carrie? I didn't say anything. Images of Jane filled my mind. Her hair, her eyes, her smile, her hand on mine. You know that old saying, Mason continued, better to have loved and lost than never loved at all? I nodded. Complete horse crap, especially in here. He put his tie around his neck. One day you're going to get it. You know it, and I know it. One day you're going to do some fool thing and get caught. He waited for me to say something, but I couldn't. Was he right? I stay quiet, he said, making the knot in his tie. I stay out of everyone's way. I felt like hitting him, though I tried not to show it. Why aren't you society, then? I don't care what other people do, he said. If other people want to try to get out of here, then good for them. If you want to go to the dance with Jane and screw up your life and hers, then do it. I'm not going to stop you. He and Lily had been together. He wasn't telling me about what might happen. He was telling me about what had just happened to him. I lay back on the bed and stared upward. One dance is going to screw up my life, I said with a little laugh, trying to lighten the situation. Mason's voice was serious. Becky had a guy. She wasn't always screwed up. She was a V. Helped start the V's, actually. You're kidding. I rolled onto my side to look at him. He pulled his red sweater on and his eyes met mine. Do what you want, man, but if you're going to get killed next week crossing the wall, stay away from Jane. She doesn't deserve that.